In today's society, women play a very important role. Women have been given the opportunity to lead very successful lives. Examples of these women are Oprah Winfrey, Michelle Obama, Jennifer Aniston, Gabby Douglas, Katy Perry, and others. However, if it wasn't for the great contributions made by women in history, people such as Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Susan B. Anthony, today's women would never have been able to accomplish everything that they have. Women have made a great amount of political, musical, artistic, educational, and athletic contributions to today's society.
In the 1800s, women had very little rights. They were looked only as someone to cook, clean, raise the children, and run the household. They were denied basic rights like the right to vote, the right to own property, and were not paid the same amount as men in the workplace. Men thought of women as bothersome and annoying in the workplace. The idea of equality for men and women was first introduced by a woman of the name Elizabeth Cady Stanton. Stanton was first introduced to the problem when her and other women delegates were refused a seat at the World Anti-Slavery Convention in London because of their sex.
Angered by her rejection at the World Anti-Slavery Convention, Elizabeth decided to hold a convention of her own. This came to be the Seneca Falls Convention held in 1848, which concerned the rights, primarily to vote, of women in the United States. During this convention, Elizabeth Cady Stanton presented a document named Declaration of Women's Rights and Sentiments. This document was based on the United States Declaration of Independence, except it supported the notion that all men and women are created equal. This document was signed by 100 out of the about 300 people in attendance, but this still made no change. It took 72 years after the convention for women to finally achieve their goal of voting rights.
Although no amendments were added directly after the convention sparked the idea of equality for women in many people's minds. In 1851, Elizabeth Cady Stanton met Susan B. Anthony, and for the next 50 years they worked in close collaboration. Stanton made the arguments of improving the legal and traditional rights of women, and Anthony organized and campaigned to achieve these goals. Frederick Douglass, a famous abolitionist, also participated in the women's rights movement. He and Stanton talked to other members of this movement about ways in which they could fight for equality and suffrage. In an issue of a newspaper called The North Star, Douglass said,
"In respect to political rights, we hold women to be justly entitled to all that we claim for man. We go farther and express our conviction that all political rights which it is expedient for man to exercise, it is equally so for women. All that distinguishes man as an intelligent and accountable being is equally true of women. And if that government is just only which that governs by the free consent of the governed, there can be no reason in the world for denying women the exercise of elective franchise, or a hand in making and administering the laws of the land. Our doctrine is that right is of no sex."
He turned out to play a very important role in this movement.
Women's rights leaders took many actions to accomplish their goal of equality. Some women, however, were torn by causes during the Civil War. They had to decide if most of their energies should be devoted to supporting the Union forces or if they should concentrate on political and property rights for women. Although many women were torn, the women who decided to fight for their rights fought back hard. They spent most days protesting, picketing, and boycotting. Many women protesters were arrested because of these actions. Susan B. Anthony, a famous women's rights leader, went to extremes and illegally voted for the Republican Party in 1872. She was arrested for this later on in the month of November, and this was not the first time someone had been arrested because of the women's suffrage movement. Whether it was obstructing the sidewalk, boycotting, or picketing, the people who took these actions would risk getting arrested. Once in jail, these suffrage advocates would still go on with their protests. They began hunger strikes, which caused officers to force feed them. Although the many protests that occurred caused many inconveniences for this movement, it raised awareness and made more people involved.
Even though there were harsh consequences for their protesting, suffragists' hard work finally paid off. Congress was asked annually to lend their support to the Susan Anthony Amendment, which would grant American women the right to vote. Organizations from the National Woman's Party to the National American Women's Suffrage Association pushed for endorsement of the amendment. Many women wanted the phrase "all men are created equal" in the Constitution to be changed to "all men and women are created equal." Susan B. Anthony once said, "It is we the people, not we the white male citizens, nor we the male citizens, but we the whole people who formed the Union, and we formed it not to give the blessing of liberty, but to secure them, not to the half of ourselves and the half of our prosperity, but to the whole people, women as well as men." Finally, President Woodrow Wilson, who personally hesitated to do so, nonetheless asked Congress to add the amendment to the Constitution. Finally, the 19th Amendment was passed by Congress on June 4, 1919, and was ratified August 18, 1920. The amendment states, "The right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state of account of sex. Congress shall have the power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation." Suffragists rejoiced because the signing of this amendment meant that all their hard work had finally paid off.
Although they had finally reached their goal, there were many positive and negative results. Voting has changed drastically since this amendment was passed. For example, a greater amount of women have been voting over the years, and many women voters would vote for candidates based on their looks, which would affect the turnout of the popular vote. Also, many men from the Republican Party wouldn't pay attention to women's votes and would only count the votes of real voters. Some more positive results were that it gave women new rights, which helped our country progress because of future women contributors to society. The movement altogether caused many people to come together and fight for what they believed in. These suffrage advocates also supported other causes such as abolition and temperance. Many women afterwards had a bigger role in society. They weren't seen for just cooking, cleaning, and housekeeping. They became financial providers as well as men, and the capability of living on their own now became a reality. Although because of this, men were worried about women's need to get married, and it would prevent them from doing so. The movement of women's suffrage had caused many results. Many benefited some, but hurt others.
Congress granting women the right to vote was a huge turning point in American history. Women's roles in society have drastically changed because of the rights women have fought to earn. Women's responsibilities and roles have completely evolved from just taking care of the family and household to earning reasonable incomes and being able to be the provider for the family. This drastic positive change on how women are viewed in today's society would not have been possible without the hard work and dedication provided by women of the 18 and 1900s. They worked hard to earn equality for women, and their hard work has paid off. If it weren't for the rights that women have earned, the contributions made to society by female figures would not have been possible. Inventions like the circular saw, colored flare system, windshield wipers, and many others would not have been invented if it weren't for the female inventors who made them possible. Women have also contributed greatly to social and political aspects of our society. Without the foundation of women's suffrage, other rights being granted to women, such as owning property and equal pay, wouldn't have been thought of. Without both male and female suffragists who fought for women's equality, the United States would not be at the level it is now.
Women everywhere voted in the presidential election of November 1920. in which Warren G. Harding, Republican, defeated James M. Cox, Democrat. A few skeptics wondered whether doubling the electorate would increase its capacity to function. The ladies went to the polls, but they seemed not too interested in the vote once they had it. The winning of the suffrage had its greatest effect on the weaker sex in that they had legally become man's equal.